before we dive into it, I just like to kind of set an agenda, make sure that we're aligned with this. So welcome to this webinar of native teams called Recruiting Talent Today, Opportunities and Blockers. I'm Rodolfo. I'm a business developer in Portugal, based in Portugal. And today we'll dive into checking out the opportunities you can find in the world of hiring people, how to deal with the tough parts of finding talent. We'll talk about the differences between hiring people remotely or in person and look at some creative ways to build teams quickly, like doing stuff together on the fly. But before we do that, I would just ask Gonçalo to introduce himself as well, and then we take it from there.
Great. Thanks a lot one more time to Native Teams and to you, Rodolfo, for the invitation and for being here on this event. I hope everyone is okay on the other side. Yeah, my name is Gonçalo Sequeira. I'm a tech recruiter since 2013. I started my career in a consulting company, then moved for the startup world. I work at Fidzai and then at Mercedes-Benz IO. I opened basically the current hub of MBIO in Portugal. And after 4 years, I decided to live in the Netherlands. So it was a nice time, but after a couple of years, I decided to open my own company. And since 2022, I opened Hire. We are a recruitment company, very focused on tech roles. Besides helping companies on hiring tech talent, we also help job seekers to find new jobs. So we have a career advisory area. And since 2022, I also become a digital nomad. I've traveled in the world this year. I already were in Cyprus, in Morocco, in Sweden, in Brussels, in Amsterdam, and in Greece. So embracing here the perks of working remotely. But I had a lot of fun working in the office as well. So I understand both perspectives. And I'm here also to share a little bit more about that with you. And if you have questions, if you have your opinion about the topic, feel free also to introduce that opinion, those questions in Rodolfo, but we want your help also to be even more productive and more interesting for everyone.
100%, Gonçalo. Just to make sure we're aligned, the intent here is to have an open discussion. It's not limited to Gonçalo and myself. Feel free to jump in the chat whenever you have any question or you would like to add something. We'll keep an eye out to it and make it more like an open discussion more than anything. And picking up on what you said, Gonçalo, about opening your company with your vast experience in recruitment, tech recruitment, helping job seekers, we can start the ball by asking you, like, what do you think about the recruitment now comparing to during and after COVID?
Yeah. So I think during COVID was a bit messy for everyone. Nobody knew what they were doing. Nobody knew when we could come back to the office. Some companies were trying to keep the business running and see how it goes and turning everything digitally. Others went in a hiring freeze to assess the situation. So I think those times it already passed, but after COVID, especially after COVID and the market picking up, I saw a lot of companies hiring a lot of people very quickly. I saw the quality of the hires decreasing a little bit because companies were hiring more and there were a lot of more competition. I remember that in 2022, I was in the Netherlands. And even after 5 months or 6 months there, I was already being approached by several companies and I was just a recruiter. And I was a very, I would say, interesting profile in the market. And I saw this happening in customer success, in marketing, in finance, but of course also in tech. So the market was booming in 2022 after COVID because companies saw a lot of money and a lot of opportunities to continue to grow. So I think those times are completely gone. And I think the companies are thinking much more wisely regarding their hiring and their hiring strategy. So they are being much more careful regarding who they hire and how they hire as well. And I think that was the shift that I saw after COVID, that companies are assessing better the candidates. They are not hiring like 5 or 10 engineers. They are hiring maybe 2 or 3 engineers. So they are being smarter with their money and the candidates as well. So the candidates are being more picky because a few of them, unfortunately, were laid off and they are being more careful with the decisions they need to make. So I think both parties, candidates and companies, are being more careful. And I think in the end of the day, that's much more healthy for the market, right? Because we don't want to rush on decisions, especially when it's such a big decision of hiring a new person for the team, because that person will bring a lot of things with them. Probably they will bring a lot of good stuff with them, but also will bring the bad stuff as well. And when so I don't like to call it families, but the truth is we spend at least 8 hours a day working. When we have someone new for 8 hours in our day, that will always have an impact. So I think being more careful and being more analytic regarding the decisions from both parties is a trend right now, and I think will continue a trend in the next years. And it's a healthy trend to the market, because in the end of the day allows companies to be stronger, but also candidates that change jobs to make sure they have the right opportunity on their side and they are not laid off after 6 months of working.
All right. So picking up on that, talking about opportunities, and what do you think are some of the opportunities for businesses that are looking to recruit globally? We will go to the blockers afterwards, but let's just now focus on the opportunities for companies that want to recruit globally, and then we go to the blockers afterwards.
Yeah, let's start with the good stuff, with the positive sides first. So I think the opportunities are huge. So even higher, we right now everyone it's based in Portugal, but we are 100% remote, and that allow us to have first a lot of more candidates. So just to give you my personal example, every time that I open a recruiter role and I put 100% remote on the job title, I easily receive 100 to 200 applications, and I'm a very small business. So for a big business or a medium-sized business, multiply this amount by 5 or by 10. So the candidate pool, it's huge. So you are competing worldwide. Sometimes you have restrictions regarding time zones or certain locations. But even though, let's imagine that you just want someone in Europe with a similar time zone as you have a lot of more people than if you were just hiring, for example, in Portugal, that you have 10 million in terms of population. So the candidate pool, it's of course bigger, but also the skill sets that you are tapping into it's also bigger, because different countries have different type of industries, business, and learnings, and also universities. So your talent, in a nutshell, also becomes better because you have more options as well. Other than that, a lot of companies also can hire a little bit cheaper than in their current countries. So if we are talking about Germany, UK, US, if they go to Spain, Portugal, Latin America, for example, they will find talented cheaper, and that's something that I think business should take into consideration. I think it's a good reason to go remote. It shouldn't be the only reason, because if you are only trying to save costs, I think that could hurt you in the future. But if you can have a good culture and a good team, you can also find like the same quality of people in other countries, or even better, depending on the industry that you are. So I think the opportunities there, it's quite huge. And then you also spend less money in other type of costs. I remember that back in the days in the office, you need to have an office itself, which usually it's not something quite cheap to have. You have a lot of more, I would say, face-to-face interactions that become more expensive. So I think that's also something to take into consideration. But for the companies itself, I think it gives you really the opportunity to get more and better talent in a faster way, because if you are looking for one location, one city specifically, your pool it's smaller, so you need to spend more time engaging with that talent. And if you are not known on that market, you even take longer to get into it. While if you are offering a remote opportunity, right now everyone wants to go remote. It's a trend. It's something good for most people, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. So you ending up, even though that you are not known in the market, you get applications and you get talent just because you are offering something that a lot of companies now, or a few companies right now, are moving back to the office. So that could be your competitive advantage if you do it on the right way, and if you make sure that you have the processes in place to not only hire the talent, but also onboarding them and making sure they thrive in your organization. So I think that's also very, very relevant to think about when you are hiring remotely, not only how to hire, but also how to develop and engage that talent afterwards. It's not only about onboarding, it's also to make sure that you retain them and they like to work with you and they do a good job as well. Because we also have a lot of companies that are afraid that, okay, I have remote workers, but most of the time they are not working. But right now, I think if you give the freedom, if you give the responsibility, and if you have the right tools in place, the people that are lazy and they don't work as a remote worker won't have a job for that long if you have the right systems in place. So I think the opportunities are there, the opportunities are huge, and I think a lot of companies are taking advantage from it.
100%. Like one small add here. I see in the audience there is someone that worked with me in a previous company called Sharuk. Is there? Shout out to Sharuk. And one of the things that I realized when I was working in that previous company was that if you have a product and your intention with your product and with your company is to go global and serve a global audience, you cannot do that with just a limited human resources that are just limited to your city or to your even to your country. If you want to go global with your product, you have to go global with your team as well. And accountability in regards to that, like the full remote has full responsibility, but it's also full accountability. So you have all the free time, you can manage your schedules, but ultimately companies expect you to deliver the results that are allocated to you per se. So we're all grown-up people. We don't need the, as we say in Portuguese, I don't know the translation in English, corpo presente. Like you have to go to the office, pretend that you're working, or just be there. Might as well just focus at home, just do your own schedules and deliver what's required from you. And at the end of the day, I think everyone will be very pleased because if you go to the office, there are the bills, the electricity, and so on that you have to consider. But yeah, that's a very good point that you mentioned there. So I would just now jump to the other part, right? Which is the blockers or the challenges that businesses face when they are recruiting globally. Like with your experience, I'm sure that you have awareness and stories to share in that regard.
Yeah. Talking from the company side of things, I think I really believe this in a lot of aspects in our life that everything has the two sides of the coin. So every good thing that happens to us will have a bad side. So even if it's awesome to be speaking with you right now, Rudolf, I could be doing like business development and getting more business for me, but I'm super happy to be here at the same time, and it's a big opportunity for me. But there is, of course, something that I'm losing when I'm doing something. And if we see like all the subjects on that matter, you know that there will be downsizes in every decision that you make. So when we are talking about hiring remotely, the first challenge is dealing with the amount of applications that you'll receive. You need to be smart about it. You need to create more criteria. You need to be a little bit harder to apply as well. So I ending up to have, for example, more job applications questions when a job is 100% remote, and when a job it's on site, I don't have that many questions, because if I'm struggling to get applications, I'll make the recruitment application very easy. If I receive a lot of applications, I will make the recruitment application very hard. So on that, you already differentiate a little bit which type of people you are receiving. But even then, if you have a hard recruitment application process, you'll still receive a lot of applications because some people really like to apply to jobs. Even yesterday, I saw on Reddit that someone applied for 260 jobs before they got their offer and their job. So people are applying a lot, and this is not only my numbers. We see every day on LinkedIn job applications with more than 100 people. So this is crazy for the HR and recruitment sides. So you need to have techniques to fight it. So this is one of them, and we are just talking about the beginning of the process. The second is how you'll assess well those people, right? Because if you just do a 30 minutes interview, you like the person you hire, probably you will end ending up with someone that is not a good fit for you. So you also need to create a strong recruitment process that avoids bias at the same time, but make sure that it's a fair assessment and a difficult assessment to get the talents that you want. You also deal with a lot, I would say, with fake candidates. Right now, I'm seeing a trend a little bit of people that apply for remote jobs with different type of purpose. I saw different type of schemes. I saw different type of things going on the market, and in a remote setup, this type of things can happen more often, and companies needs to have their eyes open to this type of people that are trying to misleading you somehow. So this is also something important. But also after the hiring, you need to make sure one more time that you have the right systems in place, because everyone is thrilled to work remotely. Not everyone is tailored to work remotely. So you need to have more discipline. You need to be more autonomous. You need to over communicate sometimes. And everyone wants that, but not everyone wants to be on that position. And then you also have other type of challenge. For example, junior talent, people without professional experience. In my humble opinion and personal opinion, I think if you are someone junior, you shouldn't go for a 100% remote company, because it will be harder to learn. You'll have less contact with people. I learned my best skills as a professional were learned in the office side by side with the manager. So I think if you are starting your career, it's very important to be in the office and be with someone. And if you are a 100% remote company, you know that will be harder to onboard junior talent and grow that talent with you. So you also need to take that into consideration. If you want to have like a lot of people and have a big business, maybe juniors will be something that you will hire less because of this setup, or you'll find ways to empower that talent, but I think will be harder. At the same time, also making sure that everyone is engaged with the organization. So I think especially companies that start on site and then move for 100% remote have an extra difficulty on this. Companies that start 100% remote since the beginning, it's easier because people are used to it. So depending a little bit also how the company is raised and the business itself, I think you'll have different type of challenge. And then you have other things, for example, salaries, right? If you pay the same salary in every single location, if it, or if you vary the salary depending on the location, I think that's also a big question mark for a lot of companies. What is the best way to do salaries and pay raise and compensation structure? It's also a challenge that companies will face if they are hiring remotely, because they have multiple people in multiple geographies, and sometimes if they don't have the same pay for everyone, they will have some challenge on making sure they are being fair. So the challenge or the blockers, I think that are many. I think those are just a few that I mentioned, but the opportunities are also huge, and you need to balance that as well, and making sure that you have the right environments to empower the people that you want to hire, and making sure they strive, because that's the goal, being on site or being remote, that you have a strong team that delivers results.
100%. And one of the things, like if you're an American company and if you do the rates, US rates all over the place, that's totally fine. Everyone will be happy. But to be fair, it's not that executable per se. And another thing, like at the end of this process, when you're hiring someone here at Native Teams, what we see is that if you're not that big of a company, or if you're a company that's just moving remote to a remote environment, or if you have someone that just moved away from your country but you want to keep them on the team, employers of record, we kind of realize that we help addressing these problems, and we help companies go global as well. Did you face, like when you were working in the past, like in the Netherlands, when you were working for other companies, and once you founded Hire, did you use any EOR? Did you notice the companies being thankful, let's say, for a service like this? Because again, no one wants to go to every single country, opening an entity, deal with all the bureaucracy, getting lawyers and everything. Is this something that you've seen in your experience, or?
Yeah, especially in the Netherlands, I used competitors of Native Teams.
Yeah.
So not Native Teams specifically, but other providers. And In a nutshell, the solution is good. Sometimes the customer support or the customer success part of things, it's the struggle when they have a lot of companies, and usually I'm talking a specific case where we were a very small business with just like 2 or 3 people, and the customer support wasn't there when was needed. So I think the opening door and opening the possibility is great. Everyone is happy in the beginning. We can do a contract. So in this case, we had the entity in the Netherlands. We wanted to hire someone in Germany. We didn't have an office, so the employer of record provides the contract for that person. Everything is fine, but then the provider needs to make sure they comply with the payrolls laws, with the laws of the countries, the contract, etc. And sometimes I think when you go to a certain scale, it's hard to make sure that you provide a good experience to every single client. So I see good and bad things or as a client, but I think the purpose and the intention, it's there and it's needed, and without that will be a way harder to hire talent even in Europe, right? Because a small business usually have like 1-2 locations, and it's already expensive to maintain those locations. So if you need to hire one for each employee that you have outside, will be crazy expensive. So I think employers of record really make a difference on that, because they support business to go to other locations in a much simpler way. But the customer support, I think it's something that every player needs to make attention in every single business, not only employer of records, to make sure that the candidates, the clients are happy. But I think the doors that the employer of record can open are very big, and I think without that we wouldn't have the trend that we currently have, in order to make sure that we can functional globally, and making sure that everything is also compliant. Because sometimes when you are a small business, the law it's there, but nobody bothers you. But then you start to grow, and then you start to get fines, and you won't be happy, and that can destroy a business that is just starting and just growing. But if you have the right, I think those problems won't appear, and you don't know those problems exist, which I think it's the goal of an employer of record, to make sure that their clients don't even see the problem, because they know the laws, they know the location, and they can support them the best way as possible.
Great. So backtracking a little bit, because I kind of feel that I missed that question, which was in regards to like the EOR opens the operational simplification of processes for companies. But there is still a question that I didn't dive into, which is more in regards to the recruitment strategy. You mentioned that a junior person should primarily focus on going to the office because the office brings in lots of knowledge. And it's true, like sharing, being seated side by side, at least for me as a salesperson, being seated with like being exposed to several salespeople. Back in the days, we used to do way more cold calling than we do right now. So all these things and all this competitive environment helped me as a salesperson quite a lot. But picking this and just trying to bring it to the recruitment space, do you have different strategies when you're going to recruit someone for a remote position versus an in-person hire, apart from like the complexification of the application process?
Application.
Like,
Yeah.
as a strategy, do you have some strategy apart of what you shared before, or is it just the questions that you make harder to apply and so on?
Yeah, there is a few more things that I wouldn't call it strategy, I'll call it tactics. So for example, the application process itself, I think it's a tactic that you use to make sure that you receive less applications when you are receiving a lot of them. And there is another tactics that you need to make. So I will just mention a few of them. So it's very common that in both scenarios you do a case study, but usually a remote company that usually, so I'm being very generic because this is not true for every single situation, but a remote company usually pays slightly more than a local company because they are operating globally. So they have more arguments, for example, to require a technical challenge to the people that they are applying for. And it's very common or to have a more difficult technical challenge or to have more difficult technical interviews where you go more in depth. So if you don't do a technical challenge that take at least 2 hours, you will do at least an interview that will take 1 to 2 hours to be very technical regarding that candidate. So I think companies remotely are also very demanding with the talent because they need to see the skills in a different way. Another tactic that on-site companies do, they usually do one phase on-site that can help to sell better the project, that can help to engage better the candidate, that usually remote don't have that possibility most of the times. One more time, it's also possible to have it if they are on the same location, but this is not the rule. It's really the exception of it. So it's this type of tactics that you can use, and then your overall strategy on how you approach a position. So if I'm working with a client that is 100% remote, we will map which type of companies they think they are a target. So our sourcing strategy will be different from an on-site company comparing with a remote company, because the targets of companies that we are approaching, it's different. So usually if you're a remote company, you want someone that already worked remotely before. If you are an on-site or hybrid company, probably you will approach people that already work in the office, because it's much harder to convince someone that's already worked remotely to be on site. Of course, this exists, but one more time, there are exceptions. So it's this a little bit of like tactics that you change during the process, and then your overall strategy, I don't see as a recruitment strategy, but more as a sourcing strategy regarding the people that you are approaching to get the talent in, will be completely different. The targets, the type of message, these type of things. So if I'm approaching for a remote company, probably I'll put on the title that this is a remote opportunity as well. If you are a hybrid company, you don't want to mention right away that you are hybrid. You want to mention a little bit more in the middle to spark the interest of people before, so that you at least get in touch with them. So it's this type of tactics that I think they are very, very different from an on-site company comparing with a remote company. When I'm talking about on-site, I'm talking more a hybrid, I would say, type of environment, because we are talking mainly about tech companies. And I think it's very rare right now that you have a company that is mandatory to go 5 days a week to the office. That still happens, but one more time, it's an exception and not a rule.
Yeah, I will pick up on what you're saying in regards to like you're giving these tactics. So I will ask you also input in regards to solutions or tactics or approaches you've seen implemented, or you've actually implemented yourself, not seen implemented, but also been part of the implementations of the challenges of like team building, but remotely. And is it like, what's your input on that regard? How important is it for businesses? Like, in order to, once you hire these people, can you keep a proper team building happening?
I think before team building, the onboarding is very important, to have checklists, to have information right away, to make sure that people receive all the information in the first week or first day, that they can access to it. And I think remote companies do a better job on that than on-site companies. Because on site people are always a little bit more flourish, like more go with the flow, and with remote companies things need to be very, very organized, and there is a lot of more documentation, a lot of more Loom videos, a lot of more materials, because people need to search for information, while in the office you can just ask your colleague, your peer. You can do the same thing with Slack or Teams, but we know that's not exactly the same thing. So I think the onboarding experience needs to be very good. So when we do a team building, if you are a remote company, being on site or being remotely, people already know each other, but they also know the basics of the company. Then regarding team buildings, I will divide them in 2 areas. You have your team that you need to know very well, that you see them like every day or every 2 days, wherever. And I think that should be more recurring team buildings with the team. So what I'm trying to do at Hire, for example, we do share knowledge every month, or we try to do, because it's not every single month, unfortunately, but we'll try to do that better, that we are sharing something that can be professional or not professional. So for example, with my team, I talked about personal finance, to teach them like the basics about personal finance. Sometimes we talk about astrology, sometimes we talk about content, sometimes we talk about better recruitment strategies. So that really depends if we have a expert in-house or if we bring an expert from outside to share something with the team. And I think this type of moments where we are learning something, especially when it's not work related, it's very good to know people and to know each other, and also to train presenting skills of the team itself. So I'm trying to incentivize that being someone from the team to present and to share what they know with the team, so they also upgrade their skills while we are knowing each other a little bit better. Then we try to do like small games, like a few questions that we ask everyone and everyone replies that question so that we know each other better. Like, what is your favorite food? What was your favorite travel? This type of like more silly things, but in the end of the day, they are very important because if you know people and if they trust you, will work much better with them. So I think these two type of initiatives, a bit informal with teams, they work very, very well. And I think every remote company needs to have some kind of process or some kind of ritual to have this type of events with the team. Even though they cost time to the business, I think it's an investment that you are doing. And then you can have bigger things, but to be honest, bigger things remote wise, I think they should be on site. So right now we are doing one off-site a year with Hire. I want to do it at least two, to have the team in the same place, to have a lunch, to have a dinner, to have a beer, and to be one more time very informal but closer to people. And I work people for Hire that I just saw them face to face after 5 months, and it was very funny because when I saw them was exactly how I envisioned that after 5 months of meetings remotely. So it wasn't something new, except people were a little bit not so tall as I expected. So I think that was the only thing that surprised me a little bit. But I think those are the funny things about remote work. When you meet people, you already know them because you spend so many times in the camera. And I think it was the same thing with us, Rudolf, in that event, that we looked to each other and was like, oh, I know this guy, I already spoke with him, and we never saw each other before of that event. And when we saw on the event, was like we already know each other. So I think that type of initiatives of having a personal and a face-to-face event are very critical for remote teams anyway, and they should be in place. And the bigger the team or the bigger the company, more often those type of events should be done.
I agree 100%. When I joined Native Teams, a week after I joined Native Teams, I flew into Serbia for a sales retreat. We have like a 1 year, every year we get together, every year the whole team, and then we have this team retreats per se. And it was really cool because imagine I just joined, I got to know the whole team, like every single person. So it was very good to get to know more about the product, more about the company, more about processes. And on top of that, I had the chance to basically get to know every single one of these people. And in 3 days, it's way easier if you're face to face with them than it is via Slack and so on. I will not be able to reach that many people on Slack. And at the end of the retreat, one thing that I noticed was that like my first week, I spoke with a part of the team because I was doing the onboarding, the processes, as you know, as for a remote company. And after the retreat, I realized, okay, wow, the team is so much bigger. There are so many people to reach out to, and you kind of fully understand the personas that you're dealing with, more in the sense of like, are they extrovert? Are they introverts? Are they? And that was really cool. And I think that remote cannot overtake that. So the face-to-face capability is something that brings in this part that remote can't yet. I would say yet because we never know tomorrow. And again, like with you was the same. We met at Web Summit event, and it was right away. I knew you were, and so on. But at the end of the day, it's different when you get to know the person face to face. And again, it happened the same thing. It's just a small detail being Portuguese. Like in Serbia, the whole team is like 180, 2 meters tall on average. And me, a Portuguese short person, I was like, oh wow. So here is where they do the basketball players. And I was like, okay. But yeah, I think 100% that remote work is indeed, for my specific case, this is not a one size fits all, the best option for my personality. But at the end of the day, I understand that there is this need, even though that I believe that remote is the best scenario, there is this need for human interaction, regardless if it's an event or if it's in a team meeting. And yeah, I would say that at this stage, what time is it? Like, okay, I'm not sure, like in the audience, if you guys have any question, guys and girls, like folks, if you have any questions that you would like, feel free to jump into the chat. If you have any questions to make or any opinions to share, because I believe that we're, yeah, I would say close to the end of this. So feel free to ask questions about global recruitment, strategies, best practices, or anything that you would like to add. In your case, Gonzalo, if you want to add something while people are typing, feel
Yeah.
free to do that.
No, I think we were talking about the blockers and the opportunities, and I think for the
Yeah,
individual, going outside a little bit of the companies, but for individual, and since I start my like remote journey or digital nomad journey, whatever you want to call it, I think one of the challenges is exactly that is the human interaction with people, and before I start working remotely, I hated remotely because I didn't have that. So I couldn't stay and be focused at home. And then COVID happens, and I needed to learn how to be focused at home without people around me. And now I know how to do it, and I don't want to come back to the office because it's just too busy, too crowded, too overwhelming for me. And I need to have my focus, especially our job. We have a lot of calls. So sometimes being in the office or being at home, it's exactly the same. But after doing 8 or 10 Zoom meetings, you need people, even though that you were with people
yeah,
every day. So I started to discover a few things that help me, like going to co-livings and being with remote workers that are doing the same. And after 6, we go for a beer or go for a walk or wherever. Making sure that my morning routine it's focused on me, and doing exercise in the morning really helped me to be more sharp during the day without being bored. And also traveling to different countries to meet different people also helped me to not feel lonely. But I think it's very easy for people that just work at home, that do everything on the same place, to not get lonely. And I think that's
yeah,
really the biggest challenge that I think remote work has, is to make sure that people still have like a human interaction, that we still go to events and see each other, that we still take the good part of the face-to-face component, because that's important. That won't disappear. That will stay there, because relationships grow quicker, and you increase the trust if you do it face to face. And
we
I
are
think that
that
helps.
example again. We are the
Yeah,
example of that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think people need to be aware of that. That remote is not only working from home. It's much more than that. It's working from home when it fits you. It's like working from home in the morning, going to a co-living or a co-work in the afternoon, or in the end of your day, go to a networking event, or you need to do something outside of your house. Otherwise, you get depressed and you get anxious. And I think it's very important that people that want a remote job are aware of that, because it's not only rainbows and sunshine.
yeah.
It's also a lot of
Mental health,
challenge.
like 100.
Yeah.
I would say, and this is like not a key takeaway, but adopt a dog. Like it helped me like incredibly, because you have, it's not the sense of purpose, but like, okay, it makes
Mhm.
you stop from time to time, and kind of like at the end of the day, you just grab your dog, you go to a park, you end up speaking with people, because you will always find another person walking their dog, and you will end up speaking with them. So 100%, I believe that like pets have a really important, and again, this is something that I've discussed with many remote worker friends, and like having a dog, they say, yeah, it like fills the void of spending the day alone. But again, it's not a one size fits all. Um, but yeah, I would say that I just want to add one topic, like as this webinar is hosted by native teams, I just want to emphasize that for the audience, if you are ever considering becoming like a freelancer and you don't want to open an entity, and this is kind of, I think, one of the main things that made me join native teams, is that we are helping also freelancers that want to work remotely but don't want to be attached to a job. Is you can do that without opening an entity with platforms like native teams. We have our own invoicing system. You can invoice your clients, you can get paid to your wallet, and then you can transfer it to your bank account. So I would just say that nowadays it's really easy to go global if you wish to do so. Um, and yeah, I just wanted to add that to the table. And I guess I think we covered the majority of the questions that I had in my mind. Not sure if I forgot anything, Gonçalo.
No, I think the focus was there. I think was very good insights that we brought here. I hope that the people that were watching also like it and you take something from it. And I always tell this when I talk about remotely, but I still feel the same. I still feel that we are just in the beginning. Like you just said, that freelancers right now can just hire native teams and they don't need to open an entity.
Yeah.
So I think that's amazing because in the beginning, when I was opening a company, I was like, what should I do? I researched a
Yeah.
lot. And even after researching a lot, I wasn't sure. And I'm not sure what I have been doing. So I think it's very important to have partnerships and to have people that can
100%.
support you. And I think remote work is just here to stay and to grow. And I think with platforms like Native Teams, it's just easier to do it and with less problems. And everyone can really benefit from the remote type of living without taking a mental break and really making sure that they strive and they are happy and they have money on the table. So I think was very nice the talk that we had here, and we hope we help at least one person to move
Yes.
forward.
Yes, hopefully. Yeah, I just shared here the contacts like Gonçalo at hire with 2eyes.me and Rodolfo at nteams.com. I also shared our knowledge base in case you want to get to know more about labor laws, regulations, stay compliant, and so on, based on each country. So we have it divided by country. And yeah, you can follow us on LinkedIn at Native Teams if you want to know more about future events. I will just leave here also a hire LinkedIn, and I will also leave here a Native Teams LinkedIn for you to follow us if you would like to keep an eye out for future events or information about us. And yeah, I would say this is pretty much it. I appreciate everyone's time, and it was a pleasure, Gonçalo. See you soon, and enjoy the 30 degrees outside that we have right now. Yeah.
I will. Thank you, Rodolfo. Thank
Ciao,
you,
ciao.
everyone.
Bye bye.